I'm Erica Rooney, and you're about to drop in to a special episode of the Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floor podcast. It's going to look a little bit different, but y'all, this is an upgrade. Hello. I don't know if all of y'all saw my email and my post inside, but I said we're having a slight change of plans, but it's an upgrade. We have Tara Ryan with us in the house. And y'all, Tara and I met when I went to the AI-powered women's conference in Boston, MIT. I'm like, where were we? And you're not even really getting the full awesome picture of this woman right here because she's only showing you her Zoom box from here up.
Oh my gosh, I'll show you the belly. It's big now.
But y'all, she was so super cute. She had on this little dress, but then she had a t-shirt on tied at her belly that said Division of Invisible Labor. And it was just a whole visual. But she is a woman in tech, and she is also the founder of a really cool technology called Confidant AI. And she and I were going to do a podcast recording today. And then I thought, how much more fun would it be if we all came together in the group and we had fireside chat with lovely Tara Ryan? And she was all game for it. Welcome to her collective, the Fun Friday edition. Tara, thank you so much for joining us, for coming, being here today, and just talking about all things you, your journey, tech, and like giving us all your wisdom and advice. But
oh my gosh. Well, it'll be
what
fun.
did I miss in the intro? Give us your intro. Tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came to be, and really what led to Confidant too.
Yeah, totally. Well, first, thank you for inviting me here. I'm glad that we kind of transitioned it into this fireside chat format versus the podcast. You know, both would be fun, but this is great. I want to say that, like, I hope this is okay, but interrupt me, right? Like, I want this to feel conversational. If anybody has a question or wants to jump in, like, I want to empower everyone to be able to do that. Long story short, Confidant, what I am building now with my co-founder Ariel, is a culmination of like all of my experience, like, I don't know, exploding into one. So my experience in technology. So I spent 11 years leading and scaling software sales teams. And then my love and experience becoming a mother and supporting mothers, going through infertility and like that whole journey. And then kind of understanding and getting really confused, but also curious around why there are so few systems in place to support women and mothers. And then that leading me to like a lot of maternal advocacy work through the Chamber of Mothers and my Fair Play certified facilitator work. And then this belief that like technology has been architected by people, whether it's intentional or unintentional, in a way that disconnects us. But if we have it being built by people with the intention to use it to connect, it can be so powerful. So like all of those things combined have brought me here to where I am today, which is building Confidant and spending the afternoon with you beautiful people.
Ooh, I love that. And so let's get into the weeds really quick of Confidant, because we did it briefly when I talked to you earlier, but it's all about leading and living with AI, but within your core values. And so talk to me about what that means.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of background, like just a little context. After I left the corporate world, it was software tech job. I knew I wanted to, my favorite part of that was like mentoring the young sales reps, especially women, that were on my teams, and not necessarily from like the sales lens, but more of like, okay, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what motivates you? What excites you? What inspires you? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And so I was like, how do I make money doing this though? You know? And so that led me to coaching, and I got my, through IPEC, I got certified as a professional coach, and I started attracting because of my background, primarily women in sales, women in heavily male dominated career spaces with a lot of stress and pressure applied to them in their career, while also juggling and navigating the world of motherhood and keeping a home afloat and themselves and all of the things. And in my coaching work, like I quickly realized that some of the most powerful moments with my clients were not like when I was offering any advice or we were building a plan. It was literally when a mom would come into our safe, like sacred space together, and she would bring like her deepest fear or stress or worry. And I would just give her the space to like pause and ask her what she wanted to do in that moment, right? Like, what was it that she desired? What were her values in this situation? Like, what decision did she want to make? And it was almost like this happened time and time again where the woman would like look at me like I had 10 heads, like, wait, I get to do that? Like I get to insert myself into the equation here and like regulate my body and actually take a pause and make a decision from that place. And I just think that like I wanted to be able to replicate that without having to be physically present with someone, because the data shows us that women are making over 35,000 small decisions every single day, right? So it's like, and we're doing that and navigating that alone a lot of times, and from like immense places of stress. And so that's like Confidant really started as just like a place for women moms to turn to help them regulate and make values-based decisions.
Okay, I love all that, but I'm wondering, do we know how many small decisions a man makes in a day? Because I just gotta compare. If we don't know, I'm gonna look it up, but maybe like
I don't know off the top of my head. We
a
should look.
100. Is that too generous?
I mean, it's like, and when you layer on multiple children, right? And a career, and I mean, just think about it. Like before you even send your children to school, how many decisions have been made in the
Oh
day,
yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you're also a fair play facilitator, certified fair play facilitator. For anyone who might not know what that is, give me a little snippet of what does that mean? Who is it all from? And then how does that play into your framework when coaching?
Totally. Curious, before I dive in, are there any fair play people? Anybody familiar with fair play in this group? Like you could just,
No.
oh, okay, that's exciting. It's awesome.
I'm like, where's my book? Because it's always close by. Okay, that is exciting.
So I got introduced to this work, actually before I had my daughter. And it is a method. It started as a book, actually, written by Eve Rodsky, New York Times bestselling author, that addresses the gendered division of unpaid labor and how unfair it can feel inside of the typical heterosexual couple's household, right? And so she was like, I want to create a system, a method that addresses this and makes it feel not like equal necessarily, but more fair. And in my coaching practice, why I got introduced to it is because I started to see this trend in like how moms were, one, showing up inside of their paid working environments being asked and demanded so much, but then also at home, like taking on all of the unpaid labor and childcare responsibilities too. And like, how could it be possible that women could take all of this on? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a huge barrier. This is a huge barrier that we're all facing when we step into motherhood that men are just not, and it's really, really challenging. And so I was like, what is going on here? Why is this happening? I didn't have my daughter at the time. And I found this work and I became obsessed with it. And I was part of the first fair play certified facilitator cohort And yeah, now I incorporate it into my coaching because so often that division of unpaid labor, the division of the mental labor, the emotional labor, the unseen stuff that we all carry is a massive barrier to us being able to invest in ourselves, our careers, our creativity, like anything outside of our role as like mother and caregiver and household manager.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome book. And I've seen they've got the cards now that you can get on Amazon, which once you read the book and you get familiar with the methodology, you'll see where the cards make sense. But it is a very interesting way to break up the duties. But I've got a theory because here's the thing is this kind of invisible labor, it happens to all women, not just mothers. I think we see a lot of it come from the mother perspective because of the amplification of the duties with kids.
Yes.
But I don't think that this is ever really going to change until men have the same amount of leave policies that
Oh,
women do. And I say that because having had two kids, and this is just my experience, but I think through, I was the only one back in the day that had leave. And I worked for a large global company and I only got my short-term disability for like 6 weeks, which was 60% of my pay. And back then, y'all, I was making like $60,000. So it wasn't much. But what's crazy is, you know, I knew I wanted to go back to work. And so when I did, though, I was the only one that had that time with my kid. And then when I went back to work, I already knew all the information. Like I knew what soothed him, I knew how to feed him, I knew how he liked his bottle. So it was easier for me to just continue on. And we never stopped to renegotiate the duties when I went back to work. And then I had another kid, and then it just got worse.
yeah. It is, right? Like we don't have the systems and support in place to actually set up fair and equitable distribution of unpaid labor inside of the homes, right? Because like, and even men who I'll have to look up the exact statistic, but like even men who do have paid family medical leave access don't, the majority of them do not take all of it because there's still so much stigma and pressure and these like, you know, gendered expectations of how we're supposed to show up and the roles that we're supposed to hold, that like man is still like provider, and so oh my gosh, I can't take all of this leave, and there's still some really toxic narratives around like, well, what would I possibly do to help, during that time
Right.
frame?
I'm not the
Yeah,
one feeding.
right,
Like I physically can't feed
exactly,
the
right. It's like,
child.
okay, well, there's, we could make a
Mm.
list, right? So yeah, I think that needs to change for sure. I also think that like we are seeing shifts in dads like step up, millennial dads in particular, like step up in new and exciting ways in their ability to like parent and be involved. But like we have to do better because in it also starts with our children seeing that there is a fair and not necessarily equal but like a fair distribution of these tasks, and that everyone inside of the family like values each other and their contributions, whether they are paid or unpaid, equally,
Yeah.
right? Like all time is created equal, all contributions are created equal, because without the unpaid stuff, you don't have a roof like over your head, if you don't have food, if you don't have caregiving, if you don't have your health, you're not going to work and making the money. They're all like, but we don't value them. Our society does not value unpaid and paid labor in the same way.
Okay, I got a question because I know I have struggled with this, and I know some of these other people on this call struggle with this. I'm not pointing out people, but you know who you are. We struggle with the guilt of redistributing some of this labor. How can we go about, or like what is one practical way that we can start redistributing some of this invisible labor without feeling the guilt? And I'll say, like, for example, like I like taking my kids to bed, but sometimes I just really don't want to, but then I feel bad that I don't. Whereas like my husband, he could care less. He's like, oh, whatever, so like how do we do that? How do I do that?
Well, I think the first thing, right, the way I think about it, and this is just my perspective, right, is that we have to acknowledge that, like, from the get-go, we've kind of been set up not for success around this, right? So first, acknowledging and practicing some self-compassion around the fact that, like, you feel guilty because the systems are not in place to actually support us to be able to give up control. And that's kind of like step one, acknowledging that. And then realizing that, like, you've probably tried to give up control in the past. And the way that you expected for that task or that duty or that service to be performed was not met, to like your expectations were not met. And so therefore it's like, all right, forget it. Like, I can't go away. I can't leave. I can't give up control. I can't give this task away. I'm just going to own it. Right. And so I think acknowledging that too, but then also acknowledging that, like, that's not sustainable. So that can be true, but we also need to make a change. And in the fair play world, how you start to shift towards being able to give up that guilt and control is being able to actually rely on people when they step in to help you. Because it's really hard to, like, not feel guilty if you know, right, that bedtime is going to look a certain way when you do it. But when somebody else steps in to do it, they're going to be like neglected, or not tucked in properly or not cozy or not get their water or whatever it is, right? And so Eve would say that the only way to combat that, Eve is the author of Fair Play, is to establish a minimum standard of care with the person, whether it's your partner or a parent or a nanny or whoever it is that is going to step in and take over that task. Because if you do not have a mutually agreed upon minimum standard of care, you can't give up control, or it's really hard to. And that's when, like, the resentment comes into play, the frustration comes into play, the exhaustion comes into play because we are handling everything because we don't feel like we can give that up. So I think we would feel a lot less guilty if we knew that the people who were stepping in to help us were going to do it to the
To
level.
that
Yeah.
standard of care.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. How are you at this phase of your life, right? Mother, expecting, founder, you're in the thick of it. How are you preparing for this next phase of your life?
Oh my gosh. So, I'll back it up a little bit. My husband and I, my partner Nick and I, before we had our first daughter, we struggled to get pregnant for 2 years. We experienced some loss. We ended up going through 2 years of infertility and IVF, a couple of rounds of that, failed a whole journey. And it was some of the darkest, hardest days of my life. But now that I'm out of it, I can say that I am so, so grateful for it, because it gave Nick and I the opportunity to have some really, really deep and real conversations around how we wanted to show up as parents and partners, and, like, what our core family values are in that moment, and it evolved, right? So we, like, really had the chance, and we would do it. We would light a fire outside in our backyard, and we would just, like, have these super deep combos. And that was all before my daughter was here with us. And I think that we are very unique in being able to have set that foundation before children, because I always say, like, I spent 11 years in sales, and now I've spent 5 years immersed in motherhood. And I believe that people, this is my own personal opinion, but there are a lot of cases in which someone does more research and asks more questions around purchasing software than they do around how they are going to show up as partners for each other.
Oh, I could guarantee you that's true.
And I'm like, oh my God, right? Like, truly, and so long story short, what we are doing is we're kind of cycling back to that, like those deep, deep conversations around like, okay, now that we have two, we're gonna have two, right? Like, how are we still going to carve out time, alone time for ourselves? Like, that's my biggest concern is like, we've been able with one, two on one to navigate that very well with a lot of intention and a lot of conversations and a lot of emphasis on values and equity and all those things. But like two's a whole new ball game. So how do we like really make sure that we are preparing for that and like building in cues or signs of like SOS, like help me, I need a minute, Um so it's a lot of like intentional conversations is what we're
Yeah.
doing.
I heard Brene Brown one time. I don't know if it was an Instagram reel or something, but she said, it's never 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Because you could have a very energy fulfilling day where you come home and you're on cloud nine and your partner had a really shit day. And so if a kid pops off or says something sassy, like you got to fill them in. But I think she said something like together, you just have to at least get to that 100. So if your partner comes in and it's like 60-40 kind of day, you may have to be the one on tap. But then, like, what do you do if you're both 20-20? I don't know.
I know. And I think too, just being really real, I've been like, look, like honest, you know, after you give birth, you're like still bleeding and healing for so long. It's like a woman who, no matter how it unfolds, right, is not going to be her full
Best self.
contributing self, right, for a while. And so I have just tried to be like really honest about that with my partner. And this pregnancy has been so much harder than my first was just from like I mean my iron levels are really low. This baby just moving like crazy. I'm so uncomfortable, and I kind of am checking in with Nick on a daily basis to be like, I got this much sleep, like I'm this uncomfortable, I have this level of work meetings that I'm dealing with, like we gotta figure this out together, right?
So interesting. I love that. I hear communication, 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 but also having a partner that's able to receive what
Yes.
you're saying is a big piece of it too.
Yeah.
So,
And I will say, like, I just want to be honest with this group, like, because transparency is so big for me. When I first introduced the fair play method to him, he was like very defensive. He was like, this is, and I think a big part of it was how I introduced it, my energy. I was like, oh my God, we're doomed. Like every couple hates each other after kids. Like we've got to figure this out. And he was like, Tara, like we're good, like we'll just figure it out. And I'm like, no, we're not. Like, no, and he was like, who is this Eve lady? Why does she hate men? Like, what is all of this? So it took a while to get us to where we are. Like it is not a switch that flips. It's like a process.
well, and let's be real clear. If you're going to do the fair play method, you actually need to do it the right way because you can also have another failed experience like me where it was very much like a here's my spreadsheet of all the things that I do. And then my husband's like, "Oh, you want to do that?" Like if I had had 50 lines on there, he would have damn sure had 51 lines, right? And I will
Yep.
never forget on this spreadsheet was like put up the Christmas lights and I'm like, "That's what is that even on the list for?" But oh my gosh, you have me like crying laughing over here. It's because it's so funny, it's real. But
It is.
I want to take a left turn and talk a bit about how you're weaving AI into Confidant and like how do you think now that this kind of technology can actually help women like us who are in the thick of it, whether we have kids or not, how is it going to help support women instead of us feeling constantly overwhelmed and burned out?
Yes. So AI is like foundational to Confidant. It has also become like a massive helper in my life. So I want to kind of like pull the group again. Like, are a lot of you dabbling with AI? Have you tried ChatGPT or any of the LLMs? Like, just curious. You can kind of like nod
I've made them all
or
do
chime
it.
in. Like, you have, okay.
I've pulled them all along with me.
I love it. And it's like, I think like anything, right? Like, if we've seen the dangers and the harms associated with technology, specifically social media, right? If architected and built certain ways, whether intentional or not, right? Like I don't know, you know. But the way that social media is structured today, you know, it makes money when you click, right? So obviously that has some impacts to our mental health and our children and all the things, right? So I think like in order to create and use AI in a way that is human centric, or we call it at Confidant mother centric, women centric, right? Women have to be at the helm. Women have to be building it. Women have to be shaping it. Women have to be training it. And so that is like a deep belief that we hold at Confidant, is that if we are going to be able to actually lean on this technology and use it as a way to make our life better, it's got to be built by us because we're the ones that know how to do that. And so that's what we're doing. My co-founder actually is like the really the brains behind the tech piece of it. And neither of us are, I mean, I spent 11 years in tech, but like in sales, right? So I'm not a technical person. I'm not an engineer. I can dabble, right? But nothing extensively. She has vibe coded. So I don't know, are you all familiar with that term, vibe coding?
I mostly know.
Yeah, so basically there are, now that AI is more accessible, there are tools that you can use, and I would like get curious with these things. It's actually like magical and wild. My favorite one is Lovable. You can try it for free. Where you can go in and you can just prompt, so like write, use your creativity, your language, like all the things, a web page, an app, a prototype to life, just using words. And then your words, your vision turns into code. And that code then generates a thing, right? And so our entire app experience, Confidant, the app experience, the front end that our users see, which would love for all of you to try the beta, it's in beta right now, was vibe coded, so prompted by Ariel, our co-founder. She built the code using her words, which is just wild. And I think that like it opens up a whole new opportunity for women who have felt kind of like intimidated by bringing an idea to life because they haven't had like a technical co-founder or an engineer. And now you can spin up a prototype, or a web page or a web app in hours and just get some feedback on it. Is it going to be perfect? Like, no, but it can get you to a pretty far place. So did that answer your question?
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
yes,
I'm
girl.
like,
Yes.
oh my gosh.
I'm just so impressed what you're building and what you're doing and how you're doing it specifically for women. And so I think it's such a cool technology. I was so excited to see you there. I do have another question for you though. This is one question I always love to ask. Like if you could go back, I don't know, 15 years, pre-kids, pre-founder, you're like tech sales all the way. What piece of advice would you give yourself today?
Well, I would have definitely, well, I'll share something interesting fact. So my co-founder, Ariel, one of the ways that we got connected was that I actually enrolled in like a self-paced course that she created with one of her college professors. And it was called Imagine Your Story. And it was, you know, all journal prompting that encouraged you to explore like some of these kind of unwritten and written rules that you apply to your life that maybe or maybe are not serving you. And so, like, you kind of explore your relationship to money and your relationship to how you define success and your values that you've carried from childhood. And the prompts like help you understand and realize like if those things are still working for you or against you.
Mhm.
And I wish I took that, course like right before I decided to step out of the corporate world. And that was like one key driver in doing that. And I wish I had done that sooner, right? I wish I had realized that like some of these values and rules that I had written for myself early on, weren't actually what I believed. They were just driven by external expectations, family expectations, and weren't actually connected to like my true self and my deeply held belief system.
I think you're just where you're supposed to be right at the right time. It all comes,
Thank
you're supposed
you.
to receive it. So I want to say
Good.
thank you for coming.